What do we want? Freedom! 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 What do we want?
Manus Island was first used as an offshore processing centre from 2001 to 2004. That was under the Prime Ministership of John Howard. And this latest iteration that we're talking about began in 2012. Julia Gillard reopened it, and it was widely criticised at the time then as well. The UN released a couple of reports on the conditions there, and eventually the women and children and families were transferred out. Then in July 2013, Kevin Rudd declared that anyone who had sought asylum in Australia by boat would never be resettled here, and everyone was going to be sent to Manus Island. And that was the point at which we're seeing the indefinite detention of people who have been there for 6 years.
Resettled in Papua New Guinea, an emerging economy with a strong future.
At peak, there were around 1,500 men held in the detention centre on Manus Island. Over the next few years, there were riots, mass hunger strikes, murders, assaults, deaths through medical negligence, and allegations against expat staff of raping local women. In 2016, the PNG Supreme Court declared the centre illegal under the country's constitution and ordered it closed. So the men were given more freedom and they were moved out into accommodation centres in Lorengau, and that's where they've been for the last 2 years or so.
How good are Australians?
When the Coalition won the Australian election, a lot of people were surprised, but particularly the refugee and asylum seeker population on Manus Island. They were devastated. What the Coalition win represented for them was not just a continuation of what they're in now, but also the removal of hope, because one of the few points of difference between the Labor and the Coalition policies on offshore processing, and there aren't many, but one of the few differences is that Labor was going to accept New Zealand's offer to take 150 refugees each year from Manus and Nauru.
Keeping people in indefinite detention, not even denying them even food and water, this is not the Australian way. Just let the New Zealanders sort out taking some of these people.
Had Labor won and had that been accepted, these men, especially the ones who have been rejected by the US for resettlement, they saw a way out. They saw a new home. They saw them being able to restart their lives after 6 years on Manus Island. But with that offer of New Zealand resettlement gone, a lot of the men were devastated, and in the 2 months or so after the election, we saw up to 100 instances of self-harm or attempted suicide. That's sort of calmed down now, but there's still very much a sense of loss and a lack of hope. They don't know what comes next. They would like to go somewhere. Very few of them want to come to Australia anymore unless they have family here. But for now, the Coalition government is standing firm that they won't accept the New Zealand offer. Refugees have been offered the chance to resettle in PNG, and some of them have tried to varying levels of success. But the Papua New Guinean government wants people out of the accommodation centres on Manus Island. Manus is actually quite beautiful, and that's one of the disconcerting things about this story. It's relatively untouched. Lorengau is a tiny town, but that's the central hub. Most people live in villages, living a very traditional life, and they had no choice in this either. So this society has been really heavily impacted by the introduction of this system, what they call the project. It's brought some jobs, but not many, because a lot of the work was taken by expats who are brought in by companies which sent their profits back to Australia. Some of the refugees have struck up relationships with local women and they've made families together, and there is some concern among people in the Manus community that that's damaged the fabric of their culture and damaged the fabric of their society. When the project is finished, I don't think we are leaving a good legacy behind. Manus Island's reputation is as a prison island now, it's not as a holiday destination. And when Australia leaves, they're not leaving any tangible infrastructure behind. The detention centre has been dismantled. There will be a new naval base jointly run by Australia and the US, but nothing that was brought over for the detention centre and the accommodation afterwards will continue to benefit the Manus community. So all that's left really for Manus is reputational damage and the hope that they can rebuild after Australia is gone.